I'm looking for my books for today's lesson. There's no need for books. I want to actually come today back to some of the thoughts about what yoga is, not just the postures. So there's this book that we're forced to read as yoga teachers called the Yoga Sutras. I've read it a few times just so that I can pretend that I can like quote things, but I literally read it, go and then it goes. But I get the picture. Basically, it's this idea that yoga isn't just postures. This is like what modern day yoga is, what we're doing in these lessons. You go to some classes and it's just full on power yoga and what have you. And a lot of the postures we do these days aren't even like ancient postures. I can't even remember the postures that it's a relatively small amount, the initial postures, and most of them revolved around seating. So things like Simbasana, everybody's favorite lion pose. That's one of the original ones, and I've no idea its purpose. Siddhasana. There's one where you're meant to sit on your heel, and it's meant to stimulate underneath you and things like that. Obviously, lotus, that we never practice because it can really ruin your knees if you do it too often, is one of the initial postures. I think easy pose that we do is initial posture, and then I think there's not one way stack feet. I've just done all the yoga. Let's just go and sit downstairs in his living rooms now. These are the yoga postures you need to know. Now, when it was first started, there were like lots of the poses were sitting postures, and the goal of yoga wasn't to contort and do the splits. It was to quieten the mind. So that book, it's got the sections. It kind of I think it's split into 3 parts, but there's one big section. It's called the 8 limbs of yoga, and it details the first goal of yoga is there's 5 parts to it, and we're just going to cover a couple of them. And it's the way you treat other people, so to be non-violent, to be truthful, and I want to apply those 2 bits to postures today. So without further ado, let's do some modern postural asana today. So shall we lay down and make a little start on our yoga practice? So settle down, close your eyes, do all the things that you need to get yourself ready. So the goal of yoga is to quieten the mind, and you can't just switch it off. The mind is always there, no matter how hard we try. I've been to meditation classes before, and there'll be this little perfect moment when the mind's quiet, and I thought, oh my God, I've quietened the mind, then thus not actually quietening the mind. And we just, it's the goal of yoga is to connect this ourselves from this quiet mind to what's going on inside, and perhaps the energy that we feel, and this sense that we aren't just this disparate being. We're connected to many things, to the universe, to plants, to trees, to one another. But obviously we can't access that easily. So the way we access it is through sensation, through breath. So as you're resting in the floor at this moment, just tuning into how you sense yourself. How do you feel this evening as you practice? Who is this being that's arrived on the mat? So do we feel lethargic? Do we need to take care of ourselves this evening? Do we feel achy? Do we feel pain? Do we feel, light as a feather? So we can connect to the physical sense of what our body is. And then how is your breath coming to you? And this breath is this anchor to the present. So your mind might go off on little journeys, you might be in the middle of a pose and you might notice something's happening, and that takes you away from this moment. So whenever you can, just come back to your breath. Let it be your anchor. Just observing how the mind is, observing the moods, maybe just checking in whether or not there's any connection between however you are this evening. So I mentioned two of the yamas that I want to look at today, which is non-violence and truthfulness. So applying those to your practice. You know, within the sutras, you're meant to apply it to the people around you. So not speaking ill words, obviously not trying to hurt people physically and verbally, and also speaking the truth, which you could also say should be non-violent. So you won't say, oh, that outfit looks terrible, she might upset somebody. But applying that to your practice, you know, within yoga, sometimes we might try too hard, we might push through pain, and I want to get away from that. So just starting the moving practice, we can just begin to wiggle toes and fingers. And we can begin maybe to circle hands at wrists and feet at ankles. See how your fingers twitching, looks really funny. And then if you can just relax your hands, we can maybe kind of see our feet like two little windscreen wipers and just roll them from side to side. So roll across the ankle, following that movement up into the hip joints, noticing what the knee's doing. And just kind of checking in how that is as a movement. Do both legs move in the same way? Do we feel any sensations that might kind of be interesting to feel, like maybe the odd ache? And then just relax your feet. We're going to then bring these knees in one by one to the belly and just give yourself a bit of a hug. And you can place your hands on your knees and you can bring those knees in, push them away, bring them in, push them away. Just begin to gently mobilize the lower back. And again, if the mind starts to wander, bring it back into this sense of presentness with your breath. And just dropping your feet down onto the floor so you can feel your feet on the floor, but knees are pointing to ceiling. Today's lesson, we're going to be coming to the same pose, but in different ways, different orientations. I want to explore what neutral spine feels, just so that when we explore some standing postures, we can kind of come back to this sense of the spine and how it is right now. So as we normally do in this lesson, with feet on the floor, just begin to roll, lean and press your tailbone softly into the floor. And then let your lower back sink into the floor. And just do that a few times, noticing that the spine does something. So when you roll that tailbone towards the floor, you're actually extending the spine. The heart comes forwards, the tailbone shifts back. And when you're flattening the back and you're really pressing that lower back deeply into the floor, we're actually flexing the spine, almost like what you would do in a forward bend. So just explore those movements. You know, you can go gently. You could maybe see it as a really lovely way of yawning. You can always take your hands behind your head and push the tailbone towards the floor, and you know, just explore that movement in your own way. You know, maybe go a little quieter, turn down the volume on the movement. And then bringing your knees in one by one towards your belly again. if you can now just get a sense of what your spine's doing, it's a little bit flexed. I just want you to bring your knees just forward so you can feel them over your hip joints. So if you can think where your hips are, have your knees just over those hip joints. And you might notice in doing that your spine lengthens out. So again, just bring your knees into your belly, feel your spine rounding a little in that the lower spine area. And as you bring those knees forwards, the spine kind of comes to a sense of neutral. And just resting your hands down on the floor for a second. I want you to now just think about your feet. So where are your feet? Mine are pointing towards the floor. So I want you just to bring your shins up so they're relatively parallel to the floor, almost like you're sitting on a chair and someone's toppled you over onto the floor. And just from here, just explore pushing one foot away from you. So just moving one knee away from you and then bring that leg back in. So we're not fully straightening the leg, just maybe go a little bit tentatively because it's a strong movement. If you wish, you can always maybe bring your other foot down if that feels a little bit easier to do. So maybe place your left foot down onto the floor and then move your right leg away, kind of just wouldn't let the leg completely straighten, just poking that leg away from you is all I'll say, and then bringing that leg back in. Just explore that movement. And just notice what your lumbar spine's doing. Getting that center, you're just going to try and keep it from overarching and flattening too much. Is it possible to do that? And then when you're ready, let's just bring that right foot back into the floor, and then we could take the left knee up again. So starting with that knee over the hip and then just taking that left leg away a few times, bringing it back in, just exploring that movement into the hip. Like I say, I've just dropped my right big toe onto the floor. There's sort of like, you know, the little bit of the right foot on the floor, just so I'm not over straining that lower back. So obviously, if both feet are off the floor, it might be a little bit strong. So by all means, just put one foot on the floor if that feels good. But if you're happy to explore with what the other leg lifted, then just see how you feel. Maybe even flatten the back a little bit if you're going to do that. If you're going to have both legs lifted, explore that movement with the lumbar spine pressed softly back. And then let's drop both feet down into the floor. And we're going to raise both arms up, just like a little box, have it in front of your chest. Think about your shoulders staying rooted to the floor, if that makes any sense. So you can always bring your hands up to the ceiling, but then kind of just drop them back. Just make sure you can feel the shoulder blades on the floor. So we've got our feet on the floor, we've got our arms overhead. And all I want you to do now is just slowly, slowly in your own way, begin to drop your arms towards the floor behind you. And then slowly, slowly lift the hands and bring them back down by your side. Just let your breath be invited into this movement. So if it feels good to take a big inhale as you drop those hands back, do that. And maybe exhale as they reach where they want to reach. And notice where that is. Some of us find it difficult for the hands to find the floor. So you're always welcome to go wider. You know, find a way for those hands to reach the floor. So go with what the body should do rather than what you think is needed. You know, sometimes I think we've all been guilty of that. I know I certainly have gone into yoga class and thought, oh, that's what I should be doing. That's what the picture shows. But if your body doesn't want to do it, don't do it. Go a little bit wider if that is what your body needs. And as you notice what it's like to bring these hands towards the floor and back, just notice what your spine's doing. Is it beginning to kind of yawn a little bit? Do you feel it kind of lifting? Do we feel those ribs floating up away from the floor? Invite it in. Some of us find that really difficult to do, and I'm one of them. I'm quite hypermobile in my shoulders. It took me a very long time to realise that I can raise my arms and my ribs don't move. So I'm just actively inviting those ribs to begin to float up. So as you take those arms overhead, just allow the rib cage just to lift a little. And as you bring the hands back down, just feel how the ribs find the floor. And then bring your knees back in towards your belly and just place your hands on your knees and take an inhale, push the knees away, and exhale, bring those knees back in again. So how would it feel to bring those two movements together? To take your knees back over your hips, so maybe drop one foot to the floor if that is more comfortable. But this time to take the arms overhead. And then just to push those knees a little bit away from you. So again, they're not over the hips and over your tummy, they're kind of going towards that space in front of you. And again, this is when you could maybe drop one foot onto the floor and maybe just allow that lower back to soften. And just keeping those shins level. This is a little pose reminiscent of chair pose, isn't it? Just notice how it feels. Feel the spine extended, the pelvis rooted, and those arms somewhere above your head. Bringing your knees back in towards your belly. Again, just bring the, just give them a hug, push the knees away, give them a hug, push the knees away. So let's have a little deviation, shall we? I just want you to bring yourself over onto your right side, just laying your right arm out in front of you. And stack your knees again like you're sitting on a chair. And then we're going to lift our left hand up away. Keep looking at it, keep looking at it, keep looking at it. And just let your rib cage begin to roll softly back. Keep your gaze looking at the hand. Keep looking with your eyes, not like you'd not look with your eyes, but you know what I mean. Let your head turn, follow the movement, and just notice where it's going to be a good place to stop. And for some of us, that might not be the floor. And then we can reclose the book, taking the arm back overhead and back down towards that space in front of you. And just play with that movement, taking the arm up, almost like you're opening a book, looking with your eyes, looking with your head, feeling the rib cage fall softly back. And if your shoulders don't like being open and wide, you can maybe even place your left hand on your left shoulder and close the book. And then looking at your elbow, how would it feel just to shorten the arm and to allow that rib cage to fall back? Might feel a little bit less heavy. We've kind of lessened the weight. And then we can begin maybe the idea of just surrendering into the pose. Maybe if it feels good to maybe even lay the left arm down by your side, we can just maybe see how it feels to surrender into the pose. So finding a way for this pose to fit the body. And just settle in, again, come back to your anchor. This little thing that is bringing you back to this moment. Your breath, what is your breath doing? So standing both feet up, both knees up, will roll you onto your back and then send your knees the other way, rolling over onto your left side, stacking your feet. You might actually be already in the twist at this moment, but if you're not, if you don't feel comfortable, please roll over onto your left side. And again, just start that process again. Knees are touching, feet are touching. And then we're just going to start to lift that right hand up. So again, if you've already got an awareness of your shoulders, it might be you're going to kind of close the book with the right hand on your right hand on your right shoulder or thereabouts. And then just start this idea of opening up the pages of the book, keeping your gaze on the shoulder, on the elbow or the hand. And just taking the movement to where it feels good. And then again, reclosing the book, just allowing the rib cage to roll across the floor. And the thing about the eyes is really important. If you did that with your eyes closed, you might not get so far. It's really interesting that once those eyes are open, they're aware of the surroundings and the body travels that little bit further. And then obviously, if it feels good to settle into the pose, please, by all means, settle into that twist. And again, accommodate your shoulders if it feels better, just to maybe lay the right arm down by your side. Please do that. Don't strain. Again, coming back to this idea of truthfulness and non-violence. What would feel honourable in your body right now to do? Coming back to your anchor. Coming back to your breath. How does your breath feel? I can't really say anything about twists. I mean, I was always told, oh, they're really good for cleansing and blah, 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 blah. But I think that's what your liver and kidneys are for. For me, twists are all about actually a big sense of release. There's a big pattern of reflex across the front of the body, which we're kind of getting rid of in this twist. We're opening ourselves up like little flowers. So just think about letting that tummy relax a little bit more. Feel the rib cage relaxing a little bit more. Allow this flower to blossom. And then bringing your knees back to center, we can settle again onto our backs, where we're staying again. I think my lesson should be called the laying down yoga lesson, shouldn't they? So again, just coming back to this first position with our feet, with our knees over our hips and our shins relatively parallel to the floor, and bringing your arms back to this sensation of holding a box in front of your chest. I'd like you to now begin to straighten your left leg. See how it feels to straighten it. Keeping that pelvis in neutral, trying to keep your spine in neutral. So we're lengthening that leg away. We're all going to have different places to stop. And then how do you feel to start taking your arms overhead towards the space behind you? So again, we can go wide if that feels more comfortable. And then bringing these hands back in and bringing the hands to the knees, and just give yourself a little hug. I'm moving away from my wall. I've got longer arms than I realised. And then maybe trying that again. So just taking that left leg away and bringing the arms towards the space above your head. And just watch your spine. It might arch a little. I just want you just to hug those lower ribs down towards the mat just a little, and then bring those knees back in and hands towards the knees. And just one more time, taking the left leg away, right knee roughly over the hip. Feel the spine is lengthened and neutral. And then bring the knees back in. And then just dropping that left foot onto the floor, hold your right leg, and then I want you to straighten the left leg completely. Let the heel rest into the floor. Slight little deviation. This is a somatic movement that's really supposed to be really good for freeing up your psoas muscle, which is a really big, powerful muscle that sits right in the center of our tummies, from the lowest rib down to the top of the pelvis. So we're holding the right knee. What I'd like you to do is just a few inches off the, firstly, kind of flare the toes of that left foot up so the toes are pointing to the ceiling and the heel's pushed away. We're just going to lift that left foot up a little, not too high. Flatten the back so we can feel that lower back sinking into the floor. And then just imagine that you could suck, it sounds really weird, but your left leg back into the socket. So you're going to kind of hug in with that left leg as much as you can. And what we're feeling here is a tightening of the tummy. And then very gently start to relax the left leg as slow as you can towards the floor. Slowly, as slow as you can. And then when that left leg finds the floor, just notice how that right leg kind of draws in a little bit more. Just relax that left leg completely. Just going to now stay with that left leg. Turn the toes a little bit to the right so that left knee turns inwards towards your center line. And then do it again. Lift the leg just a few centimeters off the floor. Flatten the back. Hug the leg in. So again, it's like you could draw the leg into the socket. And then slowly, as slow as you can, lower the leg towards the floor. Slowly, slow as you can, lower it to the floor. When the leg finds the floor, relax and just notice how that right leg draws in a little more. Bringing both knees into center, placing your hands on the knees, take an inhale, exhale, draw those knees in, just release and let go. And then coming back to our first movement, we're just going to take both knees over the hips, finding again that center where the shins are parallel to the floor. Bringing the arms into our little box shape over the chest. And then starting to extend the right leg away, taking those arms overhead. And then keeping the heel off the floor. And then when you're ready, bring that arm back and just still bring the leg back again. You can always bring those hands to knees and just release the lower back if you're happy to do that, or just repeating it, taking the leg towards the floor. So the muscles naturally kind of hug in. Don't let the heel find the floor. Feel the spine and how it is as you're doing this movement, that sense of neutral, and then bring those knees back in. And then again, one more time in your own way, extend the leg away. And then bring the knees back in, taking your hands around the left knee, draw that into your belly, and then lay that right leg out onto the floor in front of you. I'm just going to do that little release just to let this movement go before we move anywhere else. So lift your right leg up just a few centimeters off the floor. Again, your toes are flared and you're pushing the heel away. Flatten the back. And then just that's the very, 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 very slow releasing of the right leg towards the floor. You start to think the floor's disappeared. When the leg eventually finds the floor, just notice how there's that little bit of space to draw the left leg in. So repeating, this time turning the toes of the right leg to the left so that knee points towards the center line, lifting up the leg just a few centimeters, flatten the back, hug that leg in. So imagine that you're trying to draw that leg in deeply to the center, into that hip socket, and then very, very slowly begin to release the leg towards the floor. When it finds the floor, relax and just notice the space you have to draw the left leg in. Bringing your knees into your belly, let's find a way to come to seated. So roll up, placing your hands on the floor. And we're going to explore that same movement pattern, but in different places on all fours this time. So find a way to be on all fours. Listen to your wrists. I don't know what I've done, but I've done something to my right wrist. So I'm very happy to fold my mat at this moment in time. So if you kind of tend to notice that it really hurts your wrist, or it just, it always feels a little bit extreme, find a way to maybe cushion that wrist and let your fingers find the floor, just so you're changing the angle of your wrist. And then looking down towards your knees, we're going to just begin to round the back. And then looking up to the ceiling, we're extending the spine. So again, just exploring those first few movements we did today. And let your breath be where it needs to be. If you want to inhale and look down, inhale and look down. If you want to inhale and look up, go with what feels right for your body. Just stay with your anchor. But one thing I do notice actually is how it feels to breathe in those two positions. Just explore maybe changing your breath pattern. Explore breathing out as you look up. Maybe that's what you already do. Maybe explore breathing in as you look up. And then just go with whichever one feels right. Which one feels honest and the most freeing of breaths. So we've kind of done our all fours position, haven't we? The one we did with our hands over our shoulders and our knees over our hips. So how would it feel to come into a more forward position? So walking your hands a little bit forward so our knees are no longer beneath our hips. So kind of coming into kneeling plank territory. How does that feel? And then how would it feel to walk yourself back up to all fours? So again, taking your hands back roughly under your shoulders. And then how would it feel to walk those hands again back towards kneeling plank territory and just letting those hips come towards the floor. So we're not kind of sagging. We want to feel that sense of neutral through the spine. Walking your hands back in. And again, settling back down into kneeling plank. One thing we didn't explore was this position on the floor, and that is to have straight legs with those arms in front of our chest. So coming into full plank, how would that feel? Does it feel like a good idea? Does it feel honest and true? Does it feel violent? Possibly it does. We can always bring those knees back down and we can walk our hands back in. How would it feel to have one knee under the hip and one foot back? And how would it feel to lift that foot up? So coming into kind of a very similar pose to what we've just been doing a second ago with that knee over the hip. And then to walk those hands forwards a little bit. So again, kind of almost like a floating plank. How does that feel? So just taking your weight into those hands, hips coming forwards. And then replacing. So have a little play with all these like little places we've come to. So we could come into kneeling plank, we could come into all fours, we can come into cat-cow, we could come into full plank, we could come into our little hybrid of one knee under the hip, one leg extended back, floating it up. And then this idea of bringing the weight more over the hands. So again, that kind of little hybrid plank. And you're looking for sensations. So if it feels unpleasant in your sacrum, back away. Shall we have a little rest? I think we should. So should we explore child? So child's a lovely pose, unless your knees argue. So we've already explored an alternative to child, and that is laying on your back with your knees bent. So practically this is what child is, isn't it? Laying on your front with your knees bent. That spine is rounded. So if that isn't agreeing with you, please lay on your back. Please bring your knees in and use this as your resting pose. And just settle into your anchor. Notice what your breath is saying to you. So from this place, we move towards coming eventually to a standing pose. So coming to all fours and walking your hands towards your knees, roll onto your feet, so coming into crouch. So again, we've kind of already explored this position on our backs, and I know crouch doesn't suit everybody, so we can kind of hop up a little bit higher. So just decreasing the strain through the knees. So wherever you are, if you're lower down or you're a little bit higher, just keep your belly relaxing onto your thighs, just let your spine relax, let your gaze relax, just let everything be supported. And just look at what your feet are doing. Does it feel good to have your feet in the position you're in? Wiggle them out wide, wiggle them in, wiggle your knees out wide, wiggle them in. And then start to find a place that feels kind of right and truthful and non-violent for your hips. And then just begin to settle in. We're going to come to standing through chair pose. We are. Just thought I'd warn you. So from here, just looking down to your feet, feel the push of your feet into the floor and how it begins to propel you up. So as you push down through your feet, your legs begin to straighten. Kind of come into a halfway position where your knees are bent, your belly's on your thighs, and then looking towards the front of your mat, unless you're at the front of your mat already. And then just lower your gaze so the back of the neck is lengthened. And we're just going to try to find our straight spine for our chair pose. So round your spine, kind of come into a bit of a cat, and then come into a bit of a cow, so your tailbone lifts. And then just do that a few times, and you just kind of want you to wiggle yourself into a sense of neutral spine. Make you feel the neck is long. And then take your hands away from the floor, and then we're just going to push down through the feet. Bottom starts to lower, bringing your hands up. Slowly, slowly, slowly press yourself to standing and decapitate my head as you come up. So finding our sense of chair. So it's a bit of a cherry class today. And the reason I want to do chair is, do you remember we were on the floor? I'm just going to disappear, no doubt, and we're doing all this position. This is chair, isn't it? But it's a different orientation. So I want to make chair your best friend, because I know it's not everybody's best friend. When I used to go to Ashtanga lessons, I used to just absolutely despise this pose. But I've made it my own friend, mainly because I love what it does to your legs and your hips. It makes you nice and strong. So firstly, explore where your feet should be. I want you to bring your feet together firstly. And I say feet together, we can't all get feet together. It depends on your legs. Some people's knees hit before feet come together. Some people's, I don't even know, heels, yeah, I don't know, they might just not come together in a way that feels right in your hips. Bring them as close as you can together. If your knees hit first, let them hit. And then explore bending your knees and coming into your chair pose. How does it feel to come into a chair this way? Feels pretty interesting, doesn't it, I think? And then come back to standing. Just kind of wiggle your feet out and then try under hip distance. And then begin to bend your knees and see how it is to come into chair pose. Coming back up, going a little bit wider than hip. Maybe turn your toes out and see how it feels to come into chair pose. Maybe coming back to standing with your feet closer and turn your toes out and see how that feels to come into chair pose. You might be getting a sense of what it feels for your hips, where it feels right to be in your chair pose. So now you've kind of found these places that suit your hips and suit your fit. I mean, you might be still doing it, I really don't mind. I'm turning sideways on because I want you to kind of find this sense of bounce into chair now. So rather than kind of bracing yourself and going into it, just think about maybe just rocking through your toes, through your heels, and bending your knees a little bit. And I don't know if you've ever been on a diving board and you're like, yep, I'm gonna bounce, and you're done, and you're just there for ages, like, you know. This is the kind of thing, bounce through your feet and just get that sense that you're going to do something, and then eventually start to kind of settle into your chair. Start to let yourself settle into your chair and just come back to the sensation of your spine being nice and upright. We can have the arms lower, we can have the hands on our thighs, and whenever you want to come out of it, come out of it. It's a very tiring pose. So just starting to bounce down into chair. I'm not going to do too many of these. Like I say, I wasn't very well the other day and I don't want to go over the edge. So you kind of want to feel that you're carrying your pelvis, your pelvis is carrying your spine. I made many mistakes when I first did this. I used to spend many times pushing the bottom out of my chest forwards and not really doing much chairing at all. So keep the pelvis in that sense of neutral, knees are bending, spine is staying nice and upright. And then coming back up again, and just for a little experiment, notice where you feel the movement. So you can feel it in your thighs, but you can also feel it in your glutes. And I tend to always feel it in your thighs first when I come down. So that's because my knees are over toes. I'm just going to start to take my knees now over ankles, and it just transfers the weight backwards into the buttocks. Just going to hang out there. And I can bring the arms up if that feels good. And then again, bounce back out of chair whenever you're ready. So again, take a exhale, bring those knees back over ankles, hang back in chair. Bouncing back out, and then even exploring coming into our chair through goddess pose. So widening out your feet, turning toes out, so heels turned in, funnily enough. That sense of pelvis upright, spine being carried, and whenever you're ready, just again ready to kind of bounce in, and whenever you're ready, drop down. And bringing your hands up. Feel your feet in the floor, have a little bounce around, feel those footprints. And again, bouncing back out, and just do that a few times. How does it feel to kind of exhale and bounce around in your little goddess horse pose? And again, coming back up, and all the while just checking what your spine's doing. Does it feel nice and upright? Not, we're not kind of accommodating by pushing hips back and heart forwards, that sense of neutral through the spine. So a really honest pose, very truthful pose. Coming back out of the pose, just walking your feet in, I think it's time to give the legs a little rest. So from here, looking down to your feet, shrug your shoulders forwards, roll down, stopping in whatever fold is honest to you. So it could be halfway down with hands at shins, hands maybe on the thighs. Maybe the fold today is going to be one with knees bent and hands resting on the knees and just letting the spine relax. Maybe our fold is going to be one where we go a little bit lower down, head lower than heart, keeping those backs of the knees from locking out, hanging out here. When you come into fold, explore where your feet are. Maybe take them a little bit wider. That might feel very nice to you. It might be very nice to turn your heels in, toes out. So we've all got different hips, different constructs in our hips in different places. So for me to say feet parallel would be a wrong thing to do. Play around with your fold. So if you're halfway in your fold, you know, if you was to think about, in fact, let's all do this. Should we all come up into half fold? So I've got my hands on my knees. And I'm just now imagining, in fact, let's all come to the floor, shall we? Let's come and sit down and then explore how to make our halfway fold a little bit more interesting. So take a seat on the floor. Obviously, if generally you have a cushion underneath you, then in fact, we're not going to do that. If you tend to have a cushion underneath you, to sit upright on your sit bones, have your knees bent. This is going to be the same as your fold, actually. So as you sit down, have your feet, if you need to have if you can sit with your legs straight and your hips grounded, brilliant. You don't need to have your knees bent, but if you do find that that kind of happens, I want you to walk your feet in until you kind of go from this rounded position to one where you can begin to straighten up a little bit through that spine. And that is what your legs are going to be like in your fold. And then from here, I would like us to kind of cat-cow the spine. So tuck your tailbone under a little bit, let your spine round. And then pushing your hips forwards, let your spine begin to come into that cow shape where the heart comes forward. Just do that a few times, get that sense of where neutral is, and then start to find neutral where everything stacks, and just let your gaze come forwards. So it's very easy when we're in our folds to kind of look forward with our neck, but what we're doing there is shortening the back of the neck. So just think about looking forwards, head balance on top of the spine. So if you're doing this with your legs outstretched, do it with your legs outstretched, toes extended. Maybe try to turn your toes out, try turning your toes in, because you'll know that then this might even affect how it is to sit with your toes up. Explore going wider with your legs, taking those legs out, walk your sit bones back if you need to. And then explore doing that with your feet together. How does it feel? And then find a way to come to seated and replicate that. So bring your feet to the floor, hands to knees, start to open out into your half fold. So what have I remembered from that position? So keeping those knees unlocked, maybe turning toes out. And then cat-cow, tuck your tailbone under the spine rounds and then pushing your hips away. Feel what happens to the spine and then start to kind of undulate and soften that movement till you come to center. And then where does your head need to be? It needs to be looking down, feeling the back of the neck lengthening. Some of us might be able to lower the fingertips down to the floor and not change the shape, depends on the shape of your arms. But some of us, again, it might be an honest pose to place these hands on the shins and have that connection through the legs. Just feeling the backs of the thighs opening. So a nice alternative to dog, isn't it, this? And then tucking your tailbone under, begin to roll to standing. Just keep going, let your hips push forwards, let your spine begin to extend back, let your heart lift, shoulders roll back, hands come to the space above your head, tailbone over heel, stack into heart center. So we're going to explore chair and some warriors and then a lovely little balance. So finding again your foot space for your chair, looking forwards, come into your anchor of your breath, and then start to again bounce and then settling into chair. Hands begin to slowly rise, feeling how your footprints are supporting you. And then take your left foot back, landing on the ball of the foot so the heel is lifted, spine is, the pelvis is upright, spine is stacked over the pelvis. Have a little look down towards your right knee, and again where those toes are, can we see them? And just feeling how you're pushing off the floor. So we kind of did this on the floor. This was that mimic when we had the leg extended out in front of us. Explore how it would feel to maybe turn the toes of your right leg out. Would that feel more honest and true for your hips? Does that feel like a better place for your leg to be? Does it feel better to be facing forwards? Hands come down to heart. We're going to push down with that right foot and bring the left leg up in front of us. And just check how this is now. So is our pelvis upright? Is our spine in neutral? Are we rounding in any way? How would it feel, whoopsie-daisy, to extend the left leg out and to re-bend the knee? How would it feel to raise the arms? So can we keep the spine again nice and straight, or is it rounding? Can we adjust that? Again, how would it feel to extend the leg? And then step it back. Re-raising that left heel. And then this time taking the left knee towards the floor, coming down into one of my favourite poses again. Pelvis, is it upright? Spine, is it being carried? Raising the arms if that is comfortable. I like the arms high makes you work harder, so I'm really glad that you got those arms nice and low. And then stepping yourself back to Namaste, lowering your arms. So much me saying I'm not joining in. I can't resist yoga, what can I say? So from this place again, we're just going to bounce round and we're going to try to move into our chair pose. So whenever you're ready, settle in, just kind of bounce into chair. And then step in your right foot back. So again, land on the ball of the right foot, so the left leg's in front. Again, check where your left foot is. Is it in a good position? Does it need to be turned out or turned forwards? Have that little play with adjustments. What feels right and true for your footprint, for your knee, for your hip, for your pelvis, for your sacrum. And then stepping in, bringing those hands to heart, pushing with your left foot into the floor to bring that right knee forwards. And again, how does it feel to have that knee there? You don't have to have it too high, you can have it low, just dangling the foot. Bringing it a little bit higher. You're just watching what the pelvis is doing. Kind of just watch what that spine is doing. So you tend to find your tailbones tuck in to bring the leg up. Come back to honesty. So the intention of this pose for me is just try and keep that pelvis nice and upright and the spine in that neutral position. And again, you might have already started exploring straightening the leg. And exploring bringing the arms up. Whoopsie-daisy. And exploring falling over. Taking that right foot back towards the space behind you, again landing on the ball of the foot. Pelvis is in neutral. Taking the left knee towards the floor. Left knee, right knee towards the floor. So again, that sense that the only reason the pelvis moves is the knee is disappearing. And again, slowly raising those arms if that feels good. And then stepping back to the front of the mat. So why do I feel like I've missed? Oh yeah, because we've got an entire little section on the floor. I'm like, why do I? Usually at this point I'm like, let's sit down and do a twist and lay down. We're going to just do a few little bits in seated now. So find your way back down onto the floor. When I told you I used to hate chair, I used to hate one more pose more than chair, and that was boat pose. And we're going to do boat pose. I'm so sorry, Louise has never done this yoga lesson before, and I'm there like, yeah, let's do boat pose. So it's it's just again showing those different orientations of that chair pose. So boat pose needn't be feared, is all I'll say. So let's find ourselves sitting with our feet on the floor, knees are bent, and shall we slump forwards? So in terms of your leg position, some of us might prefer to have the legs wide, some of us might have our legs in front of us. Go again with what feels right and honest and true, non-violent for your hips. And then settle forwards, just let everything go. So again, this is another version of our child's pose, isn't it? This is another version of that hugging your knees into your chest position. The spine is rounded. We're letting go of all that tension through the lower back. So from here, we're going to be bringing our focus now into our tailbone. And I want you just to begin to focus upon your sacrum and the very lowest vertebrae of your spine. And just imagine you could place them all one by one on top of each other. So the spine begins to grow, finding that sense of height. And then we can cat-cow. So tucking the tailbone under, pushing the tailbone back, brings that movement through the spine. So just find that wave-like movement through the spine, just by moving your tailbone. And then find that place where you are neither slouched nor bringing your heart forward. So you're going to then start to feel those tummy muscles begin to work. And this might be where you stay with your boat pose, with the feet on the floor, but the spine tall, and a kind of gentle sense of leaning back, looking towards the space in front of you. And whenever you want to come out of this again, tuck the tailbone under, and we can bring that heart forwards and just kind of play with that if that is where you want to be. But you might want to explore kind of leaning back a little bit more. So tilting the tailbone slightly under, but keeping the spine straight. How does that feel? So again, it's just kind of like going into that chair pose, isn't it? Again, but it's just changed the movement now so we feel it through the belly. And whenever you want to move, you bring yourself forwards and we can have a little relax. So just explore stacking and then leaning, seeing how that feels. And just again, think about that sense of neutral through the spine. Neck is long, shoulders relaxed. Coming back to your anchor. And then when you're ready again, we can roll out. But boat pose does involve feet coming off the floor. So you might be exploring coming up, coming into this first position, or this, I should say, second position, and raising a foot. And you might just bring that one down and then play with raising the other foot. And you might think about raising both feet. And coming back out of it. So I often find that boat pose is it can seem like a bit of a stress position because you're kind of holding it and you want that breath to stay there and you're like, it's not hurting. So please keep it moving, explore changing those positions. And it might be you're doing a nice little variation, rolling it out of it, stacking the spine, not doing it, leaning back, not taking your feet off the floor, kind of playing with all those little iterations of boat pose. Coming back out and just let everything go. Taking your hands to the floor behind you and widen out your feet. I think these hip flexors need a good release off, don't they? So just let the knees fall to the left maybe, and then let them fall to the right. Just find that way to let the knees feel nice and heavy. Create lots of space between your knees. So if your knees are hitting your feet, go that little bit wider. And then start to let your hands follow that movement. So as your knees go one way, take both hands that same way and slowly turn your head so you're looking over the shoulder. And we are creating a really beautiful extension through that knee that's kind of behind you. Do you feel it from the ear through the hip to the knee? And then whenever you're ready, spiral back the other way and let the knees go and both hands to the same direction as the knee. And again, just follow the movement into the neck. Slowly does it. Take, with this one again, it's a really honest pose. It's very easy, I think, for this pose to like think, oh, this is really lovely, and push into it. Don't push. Just be curious. Imagine that you're just wondering what's just behind you, but slightly out of eye shot, and you're just kind of turning your head. Like, what is over there? And just slowly turn your head. And if it feels good, we can begin to let the hands be more involved. So my knees are both now to the left, and the right hand's come across, and I'm just beginning to slide the hand away, and I'm sliding that hand back in. So again, come back to this idea of honesty and truthfulness, and you don't have to push into the deepest posture if it doesn't feel right. If it feels better, just to do it a little. In fact, I actually encourage you to do that movement just a little, to not go all the way into the twist, and just notice that whatever you do with your hand, the hip does the same thing. So you bring the hand closer, the hip comes to the floor. As you push the hand away, the hip moves away from the floor. Just take your time and feel that movement, connecting your hand to your hip. And then if it feels good, then begin to slide away and just take your time. You kind of want the body just to kind of coax itself into the movement. So if you want to switch sides already, switch sides already. It's up to you. Stay there if that feels good. But if you want to move the other way, move the other way. Take your time, play with that movement. And then in the next few moments, finding your way back to seated. So we've kind of got two folds to do next. One is, it kind of struck me that it would have been the perfect fold for this lesson. So I thought I'd just whack it in now. So coming down onto your back, and just let the ground support you for a moment. You can have your knees bent if that feels good, or you can have your legs out, it's stretched if that feels good, and just feel the ground behind you. Coming back to your anchor. And bend then your left knee so your foot is standing on the floor, and raise your right leg towards the ceiling. And this is where you might think, this is where I need a belt. So if you've got a handy belt somewhere nearby, fantastic. You might want to use your trousers, use your trousers to move your leg. You can do that. If your hands will reach the back of your thigh, let your hands reach the back of your thigh. And then bend that right knee. So the hand, what is it called? It's called your hands, isn't it? Your hands are just kind of nestled behind your knee, and that leg is nice and bent. And then start to slowly unbend your right knee towards the ceiling. And then rebend the knee. And then just do that a few times and just watch what your spine is doing. So it might be not doing very much, but if you were to hold that leg up towards the ceiling and then begin to straighten your left leg, what does your spine do then? Does it stay does it flatten? Does it arch? Does your left leg actually fully come to the floor, or is there a little gap behind the leg? So I want you just begin to press back with your left thigh into the floor. Just imagine that, I don't know, the floor's trying to lift up, you're trying to hold it back with your left leg. Just explore pushing that left leg down into the floor. And then as you're doing that, just rebend that right knee. And you're just pressing still back with your left thigh, your left shin, your left calf into the floor as you begin to extend the right leg again. And then again, just bend the knee. And again, just explore extending that leg. And it might be now you're happy to stay here. You might be happy to rebend your left leg, keeping that right leg extended. You might be able to walk your right hand up towards your right ankle, maybe your right shin, your right big toe. If you can hold the big toe, try explore holding the big toe. And once you kind of find where you want to hold in the leg again, just explore holding that left leg and extending it out again. See how that feels. And then just check into your low back. Is it telling you that this is not for you? So if it's telling you it's not for you, rebend the left leg and just explore then pressing your tailbone into the floor with that left leg bent. But if you're happy to keep that left leg on the floor and we're not feeling any kind of discomfort through the lower back, re-straighten the left leg and you're just going to press the tailbone into the floor. So we're just coming back to this idea of, is this spine in neutral? Rebending the knee and just I think you can just lay that right leg down. Let the right leg find the floor and just for a moment check out your body, left side, right side. And then rebend the knees and taking then the left foot up to the ceiling. And then you've got a clue, where does the hand want to go? Will it go around the left leg? Maybe it will. Maybe you're going to hold onto the trousers. Maybe you're going to take a belt and hold onto the belt around the back of the leg. And then again, just rebend that left knee and slowly extend the leg to the ceiling. Slowly rebend the knee and just explore that as a movement, noticing how it feels through the spine. So for me, the honesty in this pose is not what the leg does, but it's the relationship between leg and spine. Can we keep that spine from kind of rounding too much, from kind of going into like pain too much? You don't want, if the sacrum is telling you to a few little things, then don't do it. Go with comfort. Finding now that's time where you can extend the left leg and then maybe exploring straightening the right leg. How does it feel to do this pose with the right leg straight? Can we roll the tailbone forwards, or is it kind of not wanting to? Is the right thigh off the floor in any way? Is there a bend behind the knee? Can we start to press that right thigh back into the floor with the shin as well? And again, just come back to the left leg, rebend it as you press the right thigh back. And then again, extend the leg up as you press that right thigh back. How does that feel? Starting again to extend the left leg up and explore doing the same pose, but with the right knee bent and the foot on the floor, but then this time pressing the tailbone into the floor. So we have that little lumbar curve. And then once we have that, how does it feel to begin to re-straighten that right leg? So again, come back to honesty. If something feels like it's being compromised, if it feels like there's any sensation in the sacrum, if the lower back is wanting to round, just rebend that right knee and just keep extending the left heel to the ceiling, keep pressing the sit bone towards the floor. And then let's bend both knees in towards the belly. And just bringing those knees into the belly and push the knees away, coming into Apanasana. I've lied. There was another pose, but it would mean sitting up, and I don't want to do that to you. So from here, just bringing your feet into the floor and starting to slide your feet out, if that is comfortable, into Shavasana, or have the knees bent if that's where you want to be. And we're just going to settle into breath again. Trying to work out where the guitar's coming from. I don't know if you can hear it. My son was knocking on the door and now he's got his guitar out. He's downstairs. And settling into the rhythm of your breath. Coming back to your anchor. How would it feel to begin to expand your breath? Just to let it be a little bit bigger than it naturally is. To maybe let the inhale be a little bit longer. If it doesn't feel right, then don't let it do it. Just let your breath be natural. And how would it feel to maybe let your exhale be a little bit longer? So it might be that it just naturally is falling into that rhythm, that you've naturally grown the inhale and the exhale. I'd like to move us onto our side for our relaxation. I can't remember if I did this with you last week. I know I did later on in the week. And I see this as I call it the embryonic breath. Although babies don't breathe, I'm sure, because they're in water. So laying on your side, whichever side feels better, have a cushion underneath if that feels good. If you need to have a cushion between your knees, put a cushion between your knees. If you need a cushion under your head, put a cushion under your head. So you're just laying on your side with your knees stacked and your feet roughly together. And just one arm is in front of you just to support you. And then if you can just let that hand that's on the floor find your belly, just let it rest on your rib cage. And again, just come back to that breath that you've just been doing, just that soft, natural breath. And then just inquiring how it would be just to expand that breath, just naturally, just make it a little bit bigger. And as you're laying on your side and you can feel this breath within you, what is the arm doing that's on the side of your body? Can you feel it, your hand kind of opening and closing with your breath? As the belly pushes on the hand, it kind of widens it, and as you breathe out, it just kind of closes it slightly. And as you breathe in into this hand, and you might even feel then that there's movement in the arm, that the elbow isn't static. And then if you just stay with this breath, you might realise then that the shoulder that's rested on the top side of the body isn't static, it moves with your breath. And the rib cage moves with your breath. And I don't know if you can feel it, but there's a slight rolling of the body as you breathe in. As you breathe in, you slightly roll forwards. And as you breathe out, you slightly roll backwards. Just let it happen. Let the breath fill you and roll you. And then if you were just to stay with that sensation of the fullness of your breath rolling you, you would then notice that your top leg isn't still. The top knee kind of pushes forward slightly of the bottom knee, and each time you breathe out, it rolls slightly back. And each time you breathe in, it pushes slightly forwards. And then you might notice the top shin isn't static, it's moving. You might start to feel that this breath is actually filling all of you. If you can connect to that, stay with that. But I just want you just to imagine that just beneath your feet there's a little platform that you're just standing on. Again, we're almost in that chair pose again, but it's a little bit easier to do in this place, isn't it? And just imagine that as you take an inhale, you're just going to push slightly down with the feet. And as you breathe out, just relax that movement. And as you take an inhale, just the gentlest 5%, 2% push down the feet. And as you exhale, just relax it off. And do we feel our spine kind of lengthening through us? And as you exhale, a softening. And if it doesn't work for you, it's okay. Come back to what does. Settle back to the anchor that worked for you. And let go of any idea of moving. And just notice the movement that is naturally occurring through the body. Just feeling that this breath, this energy within you is deeply connected to the self. And I'm reminded of a little phrase that I know from the only one I can quote from the Hatha Yoga Pradipika. And it's yoga is a journey of the self through the self to the self. And again, just from this breath and feeling all the movements, you get this sense that it's this deep connection. Your breath moves you, it moves your body. Neurologically, how do we feel deep within? So you're doing some amazing things for your mind and for your nervous system. You're just in this parasympathetic nervous system, soothing, reducing cortisol, reducing the nerves that we feel, reducing stress, and just connecting to yourself. If it feels more honest and true and non-violent, to straighten your legs, straighten your legs. But if you want to stay on your back, on your side even, stay on your side. And just spend these next few moments just with you and all the things that make you you. And whenever you're ready, it might be stay on the floor, So it might be the quietest end I've ever done to this lesson. But whenever you're ready, come to seated, or if you want me just to go away, I'll go away. Oh, you're moving. Oh, you can stay there. Right. Namaste. Thank you. Oh, you look sleepy.